Good evening. I'm going to try to do this through a screencast so we can save people getting out on the roads and driving, and yet you still get to have class. Hopefully this works. So let's start with the question. So if all living things are composed of cells, how do we and other eukaryotic organisms get more cells? So the first thing you have to understand is we already learned about the cell, and we learned that inside of the nucleus is the genetic material, or the DNA. And the DNA is simply a molecule that is coiled up with protein to make the chromosome. And this is basically what a chromosome looks like. And if you looked at a segment of a chromosome, then you would look at the gene. And the gene is what codes for a trait. So your DNA is located inside of your nucleus, and long strands of DNA are coiled up with proteins. So the two components of a chromosome are DNA and protein. And so the DNA and protein coil up to form a chromosome. You don't actually see these chromosomes until right before mitosis, whenever the cell begins to divide its nucleus. And that's what we did in the lab last night. If you missed lab, then I'll give you a chance to come in and make sure you can use a microscope and let you find a few of the phases of mitosis. And then you can take the worksheet to finish it at home on your own time. Okay, so we still haven't answered the question. So how do we and other eukaryotic organisms get more cells? And the answer is through mitosis, and we get new sex cells through meiosis. But if we just need to get more skin, more muscle, more hair, then it's through mitosis. So if we want to look at all of our chromosomes that are located inside of one of our cells, they have a process where they can catch the cell during mitosis, and usually they try to catch it during metaphase of mitosis because the chromosomes are all lined up and very distinct at that point. They take them out, they line them up starting with the longest pair and go from the longest down to the shortest, and then they put in the sex chromosomes, the X and the Y chromosome. So this diagram that shows your chromosomes lined up from 1 through the 23rd pair is called a karyotype. This one is a male karyotype. This one is a female karyotype. So every human cell contains 23 pairs of chromosomes. One comes from your mother and one comes from your father. You can see these are single chromatids, and then these are sister chromatids. So basically these chromosomes have already been duplicated in interphase, in the S phase of interphase, and these chromosomes have not been duplicated. And so they both represent one chromosome from your mother, one chromosome from your father, and this is one duplicated chromosome from your mother, one duplicated chromosome from your father. You can see all the tiny bands on these chromosomes in the first pair in the female one, and that's actually a gene. And so you can see different genes have different banding colors that they can look at, and they can actually line them up and see where the genes are. In this way they can see if it's the proper length and if the bands are in the proper place, and actually determine whether or not an organism would have a genetic disorder. And they can also determine the sex, of course. So the sex chromosomes are the 23rd pair. Females have 2 X's, males have an X and a Y. The rest of the chromosomes, the other 22 pairs, are called autosomal chromosomes, and they just code for various genetic traits that are exhibited other than the traits that have to do with gender. So a couple of words that you need to make sure that you can understand is, first off, a homologous pair of chromosomes are chromosomes that are of the same size and carry the same gene. One's from your father, one's from your mother. Then they go through replication in interphase, and they actually just make a copy of themselves. Oops, I'm sorry. They make a copy of themselves, and once they go through replication, then they look like the X that you typically see. So this is a duplicated chromosome. This is your father's, and this is your mother's. And the two together are called a homologous pair, and these up here are also a homologous pair of chromosomes. Homo means the same, so these are chromosomes that have the same genes and they're the same size and are numbered the same. So the first pair, the second pair, the 22nd pair, and so forth. Down here, move my screen down just a little bit. Well, grab it up here. There you go. The sister chromatids are each of the sides of one chromosome, and they're connected by the centromere. And so when they talk about the sister chromatids being separated, they're going to be separated right here at the centromere during mitosis. And so that's all a sister chromatid is. So that's a little bit of terminology to keep you straight. So if I look at this karyotype, is it a male or is it a female? You look at all the 23 pairs and you get down to the sex chromosomes and it has 2 X's, so therefore this is a female karyotype. Then it says, does this person have a normal karyotype? Notice at the 21st pair there are 3 chromosomes, which is not good, and this is called trisomy 21 or Down syndrome. So this is one way that they could diagnose someone that had a pregnancy. They go in, they do an amniocentesis, and they draw fluid out of around the fetus in the amniotic sac, and they can take cells that are currently dividing and take the chromosomes out of the cells, put them into a karyotype. They can determine the sex of the baby, and they can determine any abnormalities, and then let the parents know before the fetus is actually born. So here's another karyotype. Is this a male or a female? Come down here and notice there's 2 X's and a Y. So male or female. And is this normal? No, this is not normal. This is called Klinefelter syndrome, and the organism or the person actually has 2 female chromosomes, which make them have female characteristics, and a Y chromosome, which would be contributing to the male characteristics. And whenever a person has a genetic makeup like this, their tendency is to be sterile, so they usually don't make children, and they have several characteristics that are unusual, and they have sometimes breasts but look like a man. There's a lot of characteristics. This link down here is actually a really good link. I'm going to post this PowerPoint, so you'll be able to click on this and watch this little video, or go to, I believe this is a site that you can go to, and you can see some of the various genetic diseases. It's kind of an interesting site. Okay, so a little bit more terminology. First thing you have to understand is whenever they refer to a gamete, they're referring to a sex cell, and whenever they refer to somatic cells, they're referring to a body cell. So this is only egg and sperm, and this is any other cell inside of the organism. So it could be a skin cell, it could be a blood cell, okay, and the difference is sex cells are haploid, represented by an N, and they have half the chromosomes because they're going to combine in order to make a somatic cell. So they have to only have half the chromosomes. You can see they're lined up, and this organism would have an X and a Y, therefore it would make an X and a Y over here, which would be a boy. So N is haploid, half the chromosomes, in gametes, which are sex cells, and those are egg and sperm. 2N is diploid, and that's a full set of chromosomes, and it looks like this. And this is in a somatic cell or a body cell. And a zygote is just whenever the egg and the sperm come together and fertilize and begin the process of creating a human. So the haploid number of chromosomes for a human is 23. The diploid number for a human is 46. Another way they might say that is 23 pair and then 23 chromosomes. Okay, so a couple more questions. How many cells make up a human body if we are entirely composed of cells? And the answer is trillions of cells. And then, okay, so cells eventually wear out and die, so how many cells are made each day in our body? And that's billions of cells. It takes constant mitosis to keep our body functioning and our cells healthy. So what happens when there's a malfunction in the process to make a new cell? So if you think about it, and there are billions of cells being made every day, there's going to have to be some malfunctions. And the answer is apoptosis, which is in your textbook, and it's a programmed cell death. And the cell actually detects damage inside of the cell, therefore it's going to separate itself from the cell and looks like it boils and disintegrates and dies. And it's just programmed cell death. Another thing that happens is cancer, and cancer is just uncontrolled division of the cells. I'm going to go ahead and show you this cancer one just because it shows a perfect example of what's going on, and it's only like 2 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead. There's no sound to it. It's just going to show you. This is what cancer looks like. And you can see down here the normal cell division is occurring. I guess there's some sound to it. Notice the centrioles form the spindles, line up the chromosomes, divide, make a new cell. And they're inhibited by how much space they have, and so whenever they run out of space, they quit dividing. Now this is what cancer cell division looks like. And the cell basically goes haywire and out of control and has multiple cell divisions. And you can see over here, it's going crazy. And what eventually forms is a tumor. They're not having apoptosis occur even though there's damage in the cell division. One of the genes that regulates apoptosis has been mutated, and you end up with this growth. And it shows you a nice little comparison here. You can watch the cell number is 2 here, and the cell number is 4 here, and then watch what happens as it progresses. It just goes haywire, out of control. And so cancer is basically just a disruption in the cell cycle. There's some sort of a error that occurs in tumor suppressor genes, and there's no regulation of the cell cycle. And the only treatment is to remove those cells or to kill those cells. And they use chemotherapy and radiation to disrupt the cell cycle. And alright, so let's get back here. So apoptosis, this is another video that you can go watch, and it just shows the destruction of a cell. I'm going to go ahead and stop at this point. I may have to do several of these because I only have 15 minutes on this free Screencast-O-Matic. I'll talk to you in a minute.